Today's episode is packed with wisdom. I had the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Cedric B. Howard, a seasoned leader in higher education and a father who's raised excellence and a man who's committed to generational trajectories. We talked about everything from college readiness and resilience to building family trust and redefining what legacy really means. If you've ever asked yourself how to raise strong, grounded, financially wise kids, this conversation is for you.
Don't move. Keep it locked.
You already know.
You're listening to the Fit Fatherhood Podcast. And we're having conversations with dope dads covering the 4 pillars of fatherhood. We call it the Fit Fatherhood Formula. Faith, family, finance, and fitness. That's right. These dads are setting the pace in business and fatherhood. This show isn't only about the outside success. We're getting down to who you are. Gentlemen, it's time to get fit. And now, let's get into the show.
All right. Welcome back to the Fit Fatherhood Podcast, a podcast for fathers by fathers, where we talk about the 4 pillars of fatherhood, which are faith, family, finance, and fitness. And I'm excited to have this guest on. I was doing some research and it said 30 years of experience. And I looked at the picture and I'm like, huh? But you know what they say, black don't crack. So I am, I'm telling you, man, I was shocked. I looked at it and I looked at it again. I'm like, 30 years, there's no way. He must have started when he was 10. But I am excited to have Dr. Cedric B. Howard as my guest today. Cedric, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. And yes, I am of the age where I'm very blessed and fortunate to not look my age. And oftentimes I let people know that I'm not the only doctor in my household. My oldest have finished medical school. That tells you how old I am.
Wow. And that's amazing, man. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to Black Skin. I'm telling you, man, like I saw that and I looked at the picture and I saw it again. I'm like, oh, he AI'd his picture. Okay. All right, cool. So when I see him in person, it's going to be different. And you popped onto the screen. I'm like, yeah, he got his son on here today. He's trying to, no, man, you're looking good, brother. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited to have you on. Because I think you have obviously with 30 years, you have a level of expertise that I'm nowhere near at all. In your professional field, and then also as a father of a doctor, I definitely need to learn as much as I can from you. But Doc, tell us a little bit about yourself for the guys who are listening.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because oftentimes it's the ladies who are reaching out to me. And so I'm glad to have this conversation with the fellas in the room. I'm born and raised in Macon, Georgia. And lived there my entire life up until the time I went off to college. And I was 17, had not left the state of Georgia prior to going to college. And I didn't go to orientation. I literally went to college. That was the first time I left the state of Georgia.
Okay.
Because I was a first generation college student. And for me, it was enough for me to apply. No longer talking about leaving the state to go down to Tallahassee, walk into an HBCU at Florida A&M University, member of the Marching 100, picking up a tuba and say, hey, this is going to take me to the promised land. This is going to take me to a college degree. And of course, I look at where things are now. And that was over 35 years ago. To get to the point where I'm at now, I'm very blessed and fortunate. And so, For me, it has been a lesson of learning and relearning myself. And oftentimes as men, we have these stereotypes. And oftentimes we have this set of perceptions that we think we should be. I learned very early on that the greatest lesson that you can learn is how to unlearn your previous habits. Because they may not be beneficial for where you go. So I learn, unlearn, and relearn all the time. And I would say that to any man, because as you progress through life, you're going to have lessons that you need to rewrite that mental model of who you are, what should you become, how you should approach situations, so that you can achieve the greatness that is actually buried within you. So you can uncover those type of things. And so that's just a bit about who I am. I was the first in my family to graduate college. a bit of my story. And I oftentimes tell it when I'm asked, and usually people who've seen me present before say, tell the story of your grandmother, tell the story of your grandmother. And, like I said, I was the first to go off to college. And the goal was to go off to college. Oftentimes we don't say graduate college.
Go to college. Yeah.
Your job was to go. And so I went, very fortunate that I had a lot of mentors that kind of got me along the way. And when I completed my studies and got ready for graduation, I'm 6'4". I'm a big dude. I oftentimes say I'm a BBL. I'm big, bald, and lovable from that perspective. And, my grandmother's 5'1", and she came up to me and she says, baby, I want your gown. And I looked down at her. I said, no, I've earned this gown. I grew up in the South. So my grandmother, said to me, baby, if you want to see tomorrow, you would give me that gown. So I took out the gown and I gave it to her. Mm-hmm. And she called, at that point in time, there was 12 of us. She called my other 11 cousins. She says, get into this gown, get into grandma's gown. And they got in and she says, your obligation to me from this standpoint forward is for each one of you to bring me your college graduation gown. Mm. Changed the trajectory of our entire family, broke the chains of poverty. Now that's, over 30 years ago. And we're very fortunate. Now there's 18 of us. And literally the 18th one just graduated college early this year. So all 18 of us have college degrees. My mother, who was, gave birth to me at a young age, went back to college at 47. She became the second Dr. Howard. And then, of course, I have two wonderful kids. They're 26 and 23. The oldest is a urologist. She actually graduated college at 16, medical school at 21. And then the youngest one, the one that's named after me, Cedric Howard II, he's a bit of a slacker. He's a naval officer that is on a submarine. He only has 1 degree, so we tell him he's slacking at this point.
Man, that's awesome because there are a lot of stories where you hear, I'm the first person in my family to graduate high school. Mm-hmm. Then you hear, okay, go to college. Like that's just the goal, right? Because a lot of people, you look back, generations dropped out of high school for whatever reason, had to take care of the family, life happened to them, right? And so you have that generation of people, or maybe just didn't have the opportunity to go, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, so now I'm a high school graduate, and then we start hearing, okay, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. So a bunch of people went to college and a lot of people left college, right? So then the ask is now to graduate college. And then somebody like you goes out and graduates and now sets the bar for everyone else. Yeah. That's an amazing, like to be the one, right? Because they say, I think I heard Grant Cardone or maybe it was Ed Milet. One of those two guys said something like, in every successful family, somebody was the one, right? Somebody was the one, the tipping point that kind of shifted the narrative or, like you said, changed the trajectory of a family. And you are the one, right? Like you were the one to do that for your family. That's amazing, man. That's an awesome story. And I see why people ask you to tell the grandma story, because that's a very important story. Yeah. I think for me, my dad went to community college, right? His father graduated high school, so my dad went to community college. So then his ask of me was to go to a 4-year school and to graduate, right? Because he got his AA, so I had to get at least a BA. I got a BA, and then for me it was like, okay, I want to get whatever the next level is, right? So I did what he asked me to do, and I'm gonna do a little bit more. So now I'm looking at my daughters, and I'm like, okay, well, I got a master's, your mom has a master's. You guys got to be doctors now, right? Like you got to take it to the next level. But then it seems like the way that the economy is going, the way that careers are going, the way that the world is going, there's a lot of like pushback altogether on college. I'm still I think the experience that you get in college is you can't really get anywhere else, right? You can say you did, but until you actually gone to college, you don't understand what college gives you in terms of experiences. And I'm also like, hey, if you graduate high school and you don't have like you're not going to a trade school, or you don't have one of these careers already lined up where you don't need to go to college, then you probably should go to college, at least start learning something, try to find your way that way. But there's a lot of pushback on college in general at this point. There's a lot of it's a scam and, all that kind of stuff. Is college still worth it?
Yeah. So it's really the value proposition. And oftentimes, so interesting, as successful as I am, I'm going to tell you, not everyone should go to a 4-year institution.
Okay.
Not everyone should go to a 4-year institution, but everyone should get post-secondary training. Okay. Whether either a trade or a community college degree or 4-year, you should go according to where your skill set actually reside. Because that's extremely important. I think, the fact that you have a podcast, the fact that, for me, I've been in higher education, this is my 31st year, very successful. I can tell you, I've made more as an entrepreneur that was not associated with my profession than I have as an educator. But I've made the greatest impact as an educator because of their experiences. And so I say, identify what a person's passions are, what their strengths are, what is that why, and then maximize their why. If a kid as you are working with your kids and they have a 6-figure business because they're streaming and they're doing well in that, I'm not going to tell them to let that go and then to go get a 4-year degree to come back to a business. I'm going to say, no, how do you monetize that? Right. Maybe we can take you and put you into an incubator where you learn how to be a business person doing what you do best. And I think that's where we have gone wrong, and we have questioned the value proposition of higher education because we've pushed people to go to school to incur debt, and we haven't taught them the life lessons that's associated with bootstrapping. Because when you go to college and you got to bootstrap, that became your training ground for life. And that's where you got your grit, your resiliency, and you learn how to survive. Some would call it code switching. I say, no, you learn the transferable skills that you need in order to be successful in life, regardless of what your field of study is. That's the part that I say that we need to make sure that anybody who's seeking to better themselves undertake. Because that is lacking in many ways.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And just kind of touching on that last point, I think my kids in no way have lived a life that I lived at their age, right? Like they don't come from the same neighborhood. They'll never, God willing, they'll never end up in the same neighborhood, right? Like they don't even know, like they have never even been to my neighborhood. They've never been to the places that I live, like my old houses. And we one time drove through just so I could say, hey, this is where I live. But it was a quick drive through because it's still pretty much like it was when I lived there, right? And because I don't live there anymore, I'm an outsider, right? Like I don't fit in anymore, right? So it was like you got to get in and out. And they will never live there. So they don't understand that part of my life and struggle that kind of helped me build resiliency or grit. And if they don't go to college, I think everybody has a similar college experience, right? Everybody ate ramen noodles to some degree. You struggle getting to class because it was the first time that you were responsible for your schedule. You had to work some job you didn't want to work to pay for something you had to figure things out on your own for the first time, right? Like you had to figure life out on your own for the first time. And I think that's the same for everybody, no matter where you come from. To an extent, right? There's obviously some people who come from some level of wealth and they probably didn't experience it on the same level that the majority did. But I would say the majority of college students are living a very similar life in terms of how they are surviving on a day-to-day. And there isn't that for a large majority of the population leading up to college because we've created so many comforts, right? Like everything is so easily accessible at this point. And so that's why I say, if you don't have, I gotta tell my daughters, if you don't have something when you graduate from high school, if you aren't, because they both act and they do a million things. So I'm not, guys who listen to podcasts know they do a million things. If there's not something that's turning into something at 18, you're going to school. right? Because those are experiences. Even if you only go for the first year, first semester, well, you're going to school because there's something there for you to learn, even if it's not in the classroom, right?
That's right. That's right.
So has your views on that changed over time, just as things have changed over time? Like, or is that something you've kind of always felt?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, you got to identify what are the strengths of your particular child.
Okay.
That is something that I've learned from my grandfather. The male figure in my life was not my father. It was my grandfather.
Okay.
And as we discussed, had I not be traveling later today, I'd have on a bow tie. I wear a bow tie every day. I've worn a bow tie since I was 2 years old. I have hundreds of bow ties. And
Okay.
people say, do you have any, do you know how to tie a regular tie? I do. But the first tie that was put on me was when I was 2 by my grandfather. And I've worn a bow tie every day since then.
Okay.
Not unless I'm traveling. But I think an important thing is you have to create what I consider to be intentional stress in the life of your child. In order for them to experience some what I consider to be adversity, why it is safe and they're in your environment.
Okay.
And in many ways that comes for college. In other ways, we can create that stress. So like, for instance, people who know my kids' story say, no, we knew they were going to be successful. Well, why did you know that? Well, you intentionally created, environments for them to have to learn how to survive. I did. My daughter is not athletic at all. What I'm telling you, she would trip over the sidewalk walking straight.
Okay.
But when she turned 11 years old, I put her in basketball, the hardest sport it is to learn. She struggled. I mean, when I'm telling you she struggled, the first time she made a free throw, she walked around and gave everybody a high five, including the opposing team. Fast forward later, I said, you never quit. You're going to learn how to play this game. Fast forward later, even though she was dually enrolled in college and high school at the same time, she was all-state by the time she graduated high school and played basketball in college while she was going to medical school.
Wow.
And she always told the story that for her, she called me every name in the book, but she didn't see what I was trying to prepare her for. Mm-hmm. Now, when she's in an environment, and by far, most of the physicians, in her practice, they have kids older than her, but she can hold her own because she learned how to compete in an environment that she wasn't comfortable in, and she had to learn a skill. Conversely, my son, people talk about, hey, he was, successful, went to a HBCU, went to Tuskegee. Now he's a naval officer in the sub, X, Y, and Z. I said, yeah, but you don't know the 10-year-old boy that I put in wrestling, that for the first month, he got slammed on his head every weekend.
Right.
And I would look at him, and for the first couple of times, people are like, aren't you going to rescue him? I'm like, no, he got to learn how to survive. Now, if he begins to lose his self-esteem, I would intervene. But you got to trust the process. The process determines the product that you produce. And I was trying to prepare them to be leaders, so I need to put them in adversity in order to learn how to define themselves through that adversity. And so by the time he graduated, he was all-state, a wrestler, finished second in the state for 2 years in a row because he learned how to deal with that adversity. And then that's what he took off to college with him. So I was just saying, in many ways, our job as men is oftentimes to set that vision, to set that macro plan for our kids. Mm-hmm. We oftentimes say it's to provider, but what are you providing for them? Not just for the day. You got to set a path for them moving forward. And then you have to support them. Because we know that most successful people fail more often than they oftentimes succeed. And it's in those moments of failure that you learn the skills that you need to ultimately be successful long term. And that's an important aspect for us to realize, because the greatest struggle you have to overcome is the one within yourself. Mm-hmm. And so when you begin to win the battle of yourself, now you can accomplish anything that is presented to you and that you will have to undertake as a person. And so that's a mantra that I live with. I love the 4Fs in part because it is built upon your core values. And when I look at the 4Fs, those are the 4Fs that I would imagine are the core values of your family. And that's an important piece. But just think about it from that perspective. If we're responsible for setting the vision, and we hadn't thought beyond, them being an athlete or, them being this and that, and we haven't really shaped them and created a process for them, we wonder why oftentimes they don't live up to the expectations.
Yeah.
Because only a select few is going to be the best at, this or best at that. Why not our kids? Well, it's the process that you have to undertake in order to prepare them for the success that they will produce if you create the process for them.
Yeah, that brings up two questions for me. So a lot of us lean into athletics as a way to teach our kids lessons, right? Some of us are putting our kids into sports because we want them to be, the whole pie, and like they're going to be in the NFL, they can be in the NBA or whatever, right? And that's probably misguided. Not probably, because of the percentages, it's largely misguided. But if I put my kid into sports and like you were talking, kind of like losing his self-esteem, what do you think are some of the other avenues that maybe we can use to create that adversity? And then if I am trying to, let's say I'm looking at the bigger picture, right? And I'm saying, okay, I'm going to do this now so that this can happen later. Do you have a vision of what later is already? And is that something that you laid out ahead of time, or is it something that you kind of were, as things are happening, like, okay, this is going to lead me here?
Yeah, no, for me, I would say sports was the case for us, but it could have been an instrument, which was the case for me. It could have been arts. It could have been dance. It could have been karate, whatever is going to challenge them.
Okay.
I'm a person of faith, and, it tells me to write the vision and make it plain. So what is the vision that you have written so that when they read it, they know to run with it? Okay. And so for me, it starts when they become 10. Everything is set up for their ultimate success. So a great example, actually, one of my books I wrote with my wife called Faith and Financial Freedom. We tell the story of why at the age of 12, our kids have to invest in their own mutual funds. So we give them an allowance, and they have to put half of their allowance into a mutual fund. What do you think we're teaching them? Financial literacy. We're teaching them entrepreneurship. We're also teaching them accountability. And so when they get to a point where they get older and they get to my age, 50 plus, they don't have to worry about an inheritance or whatever, a part of the trust. They've already learned how to manage what we've already provided for them. And they're invested in themselves. And so, even like, with our parents, we say, you're just not going to give our kids money. Half of it has to be invested in some type of way. That's what we want them to know. Because, to be honest with you, I'm not going back. And my wife was a first generation college student, she's an electrical engineer, and run second largest port in the country, as a female. We're not going back to the situation when we were poor. And so we're teaching them situations and circumstances that's going to, not just for them, but for our kids, for their kids and their grandkids, our great grandkids. So they can understand this is an important piece of who you should be. Write the vision. Think about think about what you would like for them to become. Begin with the end in mind. Okay. And say, okay, listen, I don't know what professional that you're going to be. I don't know what type of successor you're going to be, but you will be successful. You need to tell me which path would you like to take. So we had one that was extremely smart, but socially inept. So we put her in sports to make her more comfortable with socializing with other kids.
Okay.
We got one that's a social butterfly.
That makes sense.
But doesn't like to be challenged, especially in relations to something physical. So we put him in wrestling. We didn't put him in basketball because basketball would have been, challenging for him. And so we look at what their weaknesses are, and we shored up their weaknesses intentionally as a part of the process. And their weaknesses has become a strength because we're very intentional as a part of that plan. So, I would say do a true assessment of your child. See what they're naturally inclined to. There's 4 things that I oftentimes say will tell you who your child is, because they're the 4 things that will tell you who you are. It is their habits, their attitudes, their beliefs, and their expectations. And 2 of them you control. They may have habits and they may have a certain attitude, but you control your child's beliefs and you've set expectations for them. So if you think about their behaviors, you think about what makes up their personality, you have at least a 2 out of 4 chance of shaping what they're going to become in one way or another. I can care less what my kids became, just long as they were successful and they put forth the effort to become successful in whatever they decide to have as their primary occupation and profession. Now, they both have side gigs. That's a part of what they do. If you look at my daughter, she's a urologist, but she also runs a travel agency just for medical people. That's her side gig. My son has, he has a transportation company. So even when he's away, his transportation company, they're running their routes. I won't say the company because we ain't paying any type of royalties to anybody. but that's how they were created. But that was embedded in their mind at 12. How do I take what I'm going to have and invest it? Because I only have so many hours in a day, and I need to make sure my resources are ready and available when I need for that to occur. But that came because we learned financial literacy, and we want it to be a very important piece of how we raise our kids, so that they were taking the talent and they were multiplying the talent and not just burying it and hoping things were going to happen with it.
Yeah. So what I'm a strength and conditioning coach by trade. And so I tell people this all the time. My job is to create the best athlete I can, right? Like you play football, you play basketball, I don't care what sport you play. That's up to you and your sport coach. What I'm going to do is create the best possible athlete, and then you take that and go do what you want with it. And so when I hear you talking about what you're doing with your kids, is you are creating the best possible person that they can be, successful, and then whatever they decide to do with that, they can go do it because they have the tools. Like they have the resilience, they have the grit, they have the endurance or strength, whatever the sport requires, right? Like whether it's strength or endurance or speed or agility or resilience, mental tough, whatever. Like when I'm working with an athlete, I'm building those things, and they take those things and apply them to their sport. And it's kind of sounding like that's what you did with your kids. It's like you built in those things and then say, hey, okay, now where do you want to display those?
Correct. Because as you know, as a strength coach, the mind is a muscle.
100.
So
100%.
You have to train it. And you train it by putting it, just like any other muscle, up under stress and tension in order to build it and make it bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just saying, be very intentional in that. Not about who I am, but challenge them to be the best version of themselves possible. We have a saying in our family: are you 1% better today than you were yesterday? Just 1%. And tomorrow your goal is to be 1% better than you were today. And if you're not 1%, what do we need to do to make it so that you could be 1% better? That is it. That's not asking too much. That's just an expectation.
Yeah. You know what? I heard somebody say this a while ago, and they were talking about like at the dinner table, they sit down. I forgot who it was. They sit down at the dinner table when they were a kid, and their dad would ask them, what did you struggle with today? Or what was your major challenge today? And if they didn't have one, that meant that they didn't try hard enough that day. And he was more disappointed that they didn't have a struggle. And when I heard that, so now I asked my daughters, like, hey, what was the thing that gave you the most trouble today? Like, what were your stressors? Like, what were the things that gave you a little bit of grief, right? Because those are the things that if we can figure out how to work intentionally, like work towards, they don't give you stress anymore. And so you become better, right? Like if we shy away from it or if we act like it didn't happen, or, you know, something gave you trouble today, so tomorrow you're going to try to, like, you know what I mean, go around it to make sure it doesn't bother you, then you aren't, and I say this all the time, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Like, even if you're not realistically getting worse, the world is moving forward and you're standing still. So you're getting worse. So there's got to be, like you say, it doesn't have to be leaps and bounds, but we get 1% better today and then 1% better the following, like we just continue to stack those, right? And this is obviously, we're talking about like financial literacy is compound interest, right? It's just compounding day after day. So at the end of the day, at the end of the year, it's not 365% better, it's exponentially better.
Yeah, and it's the same way with just habits. It's the same way as you talk about training. You know, if you take a day off, then you hadn't gotten better.
Right.
Or if you're not eating properly, you're not getting better.
Right.
You know, it is, what is the entire system working together to make you a better athlete and a better person? And that's what you have to take in consideration as a part of the process. And that's what we try to do. And I encourage people all the time, you know, when I'm working with, I was working with a couple earlier today, and, you know, guy that I was friends with for a long time, he's recently married, and he just said, you know, how have you made it almost 30 years with your wife? I said, most important thing is this. First of all, it wasn't a 50-50 endeavor. She getting 100% of me, and I want 100% of her. Period.
Yep.
It's not negotiable. I don't want 50% of anybody. I want all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. So when you approach the situation as that you are 10 toes down and you're 100% in, that's a different approach. Then you're kind of stuck in the middle. And he says, oh, so, and I say part of it is that you got to be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with other people. So approach it from that perspective. You know, go in and tell her, hey, I'm struggling today. I need some help. I need that. I need for you to be the strength today so I can be better tomorrow. That is okay. But we have to acknowledge those things. And when the guy at the conversation, he says, you know, I see how I approach things very different. I said, well, that's in part because what you're trying to do is you're trying to approach things from a deficit mindset. It's not going to happen overnight. Both of you have been married before, and you're trying to create a new union. That means that you got to adopt some things from the past.
Right. Yeah, and I think even in talking about like your own, like being the first one to go and graduate, like you even in that instance, and there's a lot of instances where we have to let go of past experiences or past thought, right? Like because if no one else in your family ever goes to college, if you don't go to college, it's not that big a deal because nobody else did, right? Like, but having the courage, despite the fears, despite all the other things that may come along with it, having the courage to step out and say, hey, I'm going to do something different, and then follow through on doing something different is extremely, extremely important. And I think as fathers and as leaders, that's something that a lot of us, and it's just unfortunate, but this is the way it is, a lot of us didn't have a father figure or a father present. And so we're stepping out here for the first time, trying to be something we've never seen and never experienced. And we have to let go of that though, right? Like there is some of, like there's that father wound that's never going to go away. But in order for you to not give that to your children, one, you got to heal from it. If you don't heal from it, you're going to hand it down. That just is what it is, right? You don't heal from it, you pass it on. But you also have to just let go of the fact that you're fathering without being fathered and just go father, right? Just go do your thing, right? Like whatever that is, regardless if you know what you're doing, because none of us do, right? We think we know what we're doing, and we're taking a test every day, right? And sometimes we pass, sometimes we fail, but we show up every day to take the test. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece. I think an interesting thing about the story was, or when people actually inquire, because they want to hear the story. But I say people forget to ask the follow-up. Well, how did the other 17 graduate college? Well, we had to change the ecosystem around them. Mm-hmm. We had to make sure that we educated ourselves as a family. So we have a family trust that we all pay into and we all benefit from. And we've created in many ways kind of our own banking system, taken from the lessons learned, in Tulsa, Black Wall Street. We actually studied that and we said, how can we be, the type of family that we desire to be? And I oftentimes say, the model family for us was the Huxtables. We wanted to make sure that, everybody could have that type of lifestyle. And so we took some time and we actually taught ourselves. Let me tell you the most challenging conversation I've ever had to have. My mom was 46 years old. It was her birthday. And I challenged her. I said, how are you going to be in a family that have all these college graduates, and including your grandkids are going to graduate college, and you're the only one as the head of your generation, and you don't, and you haven't gone to college? Well, she could have responded like, who are you to talk to me? She says, no, I got it. I understand what you're trying to do. She finished up, took her high school diploma, went to the community college, and then went to 4-year. And like I said, she became the second Dr. Howard in our family. And so it is really creating an environment that you support each other, that you challenge and support. But the key component I tell anybody is, what are the systems you have in place to reinforce the behaviors that you're looking to implement as a family? Having those, very challenging conversations. The one thing I would say to you is, that's something that we don't do as a community. We don't talk finances. We talk money. And that's a different concepts. And so it's almost as if we're afraid to talk finances, and we're afraid to talk about deferred, gratification. And those are some difficult conversations that, we have to eliminate as a community, and we have to challenge each other, and we have to be willing to support each other. As we develop those systems and structures and really change our psychology around how money operates.
Yeah. You said something. You said a lot of things, and I'm gonna try to get into finance because it seems like we keep hinting at it and keep talking to it. But let's talk about it, right? The building the family bank might be a little higher level than some people are at right now, but family trust is something that anybody and everybody can do.
Absolutely.
What would you say though is the first step you would recommend families to take if they want to build wealth, but you're kind of feeling overwhelmed or just living in the money mindset right now and not understanding what wealth or maybe even financial independence is? It may even sound like a foreign concept, right? To be financially independent, right? Because nobody in my family has ever, you know what I mean? Like, we live paycheck to paycheck. We had shoebox money, or we have money buried somewhere underneath, you know what I mean? Like that's been how we've lived our whole lives. And so you're talking, you're speaking Spanish to me right now. Like, what would you say is the first step somebody take?
Yeah. The first 3 steps I recommend, starting with number 1, have a family meeting. And have a family meeting around the fact that we would like to be an organization as a family. And explain to people what that organization means. Listen, we're going to all give a little bit so we can have a lot. And define what those little bits are, $5, $10. And then we're going to take, when we get $200, and we're going to invest in someone to get, to go to barber school or to get a real estate license, and they're going to serve and support the family. That's how they give back to the family. And as they're making it, they're going to take a percentage of theirs and they're going to add to it. So it becomes that compounding, that rule of 72 that we were talking about earlier. That's the first thing. Second thing is, every family needs somebody in the family, if not the family as a whole, to have an LLC. Remember, you're an entity. And that is an uncomfortable conversation to say, you mean to tell me you want me to put what I do and what I own into an entity? Yes, you control the entity. You're not relinquishing control. It is just that helps you to build that wealth aspect. And then the third thing that I oftentimes say is to normalize family meetings around money and finances as a part of the general conversation that you engage in. So you're going to do things like well, this person has a birthday. So let's just say you're going to give them $50 for a birthday gift. Well, what's wrong with giving them $25 and then putting $25 in the mutual fund and let it compound? Those are some of the conversation around finances. It's the little changes that make the large cascading effects. And so I'm going to tell you a story that changed the trajectory of my life. Shortly after I graduated college, I had my very first job in Utah, of all places.
Okay.
Utah, of all places. And my very first job in higher education. And I was over at that point in time diversity. And I had a chance to bring in a speaker. His name was Muhammad Bilal. He was on the very first season of Real World. That was in San Francisco. And he told a story, and I inquired after. He said, I grew up in the very affluent part of San Francisco. He says, my mom was the housekeeper, but we lived on property. So we lived in, the maid's quarter of this large mansion. So I had a chance to go to school with all the very affluent people. And he tells the story. He says, one day I was in social studies and we were studying the Great Pyramids in Egypt. And he says, pull up my book and I want to talk about all I've learned from my encyclopedia. And he says, my other classmates pull up their pictures and show where they were at. And he said, that's when I learned it's about the experience and the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
That has cascade effects that really transition and transform the learning experience. So I want to live my life where I'm going to seek opportunities to get experience and exposure. And so I said, okay, what are some of the lessons that you learned? Engage in some of those lessons. Happen to be in Utah, and there's a predominant religion there that teaches these values. Stephen Covey is a major person who teaches it. So I actually went to his academy for 3 weeks to say, how do I learn these principles about financial literacy and the habits of a highly effective person, which are the tenets of that particular religion. Don't have to believe in a religion, but understand it. I said, okay, if it's worked for this organization and they own Marriott and they own this company and that company, well, why can't it work for me and my family? Mm-hmm. And that's when I began to engage in those hard conversations to say, hey, this is what I'm looking to do as a family. I'm asking for each family member for 1 year just to give $10. Then we're going to meet at the end of that year and say, who do we want to invest in? Who do we want to do this for? Who do we want to do that for? Because I'm tired of paying for tuition and books, So how are we going to build this as an ecosystem? And that's when we sent one who went to school to become a finance, and that person is our family CPA. And we sent another one who got a business degree. Now she, does all of our real estate dealing. Someone went to law school, and of course, they know contract law. So we filled all of the holes as a family organization. But it started with the family conversation to say we need to have experience and exposure in order to become the family we desire so that our generations behind us don't have to struggle the way we did.
Mm. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Now, so you guys had a family conversation, and that people say don't talk about religion and politics. The third point that nobody mentions is money, right? We don't talk about money, right? We just don't have conversations about money. It makes people uncomfortable to talk about their finances. But it's obviously a conversation that we all need to have as dads, right? When we talk to our kids about money and financial freedom, what is the conversation that we should be having with them? And when should we start having those conversations?
The moment you start giving them money. Because
okay.
Technically you're their first employer.
Okay.
And their job are the things you have assigned for them to do. So they're chores. Good grades, good behavior, all skills that they need to bring in, in their profession along with them. So that's why I said at 12, the moment that we start giving our kids an allowance, we also taught them financial literacy. So we sit down with them and say, hey, here's your spreadsheet. Currently right now, this is your allowance for the month. They got a white envelope and we gave it to them in cash. And so they knew they need to set aside some money for any snacks that they would like to have. If they wanted to buy something, they need to pay for it. So they saw the money leave their hands. And if they got to the end of the month, they didn't have any money, that was a lesson learned.
Okay.
And then we start sitting around and says, okay, listen, you got a phone, well, put your expenditures in your phone. That tells you how much money you have left. Now you can start planning. Well, I need to set aside $40 for this because such and such is having an event that I want to go to. All right. So that takes away from your money. So we taught them that starting at 12.
Okay.
And on their birthday, they got a $10 increase. So, you could take their age and put a 0 behind it. That's how much money they got per month to do all the things. Now, when they got to 15, we stopped paying for all sports and everything. And we say, now, in order for you to do this, you have to pay for it. And they were like, no problem.
Okay.
I have you. I got you. Because we were teaching them, the skills they're going to need in order to be, very productive, positive adults. So the moment you start giving them money, the moment that you start teaching them financial literacy and financial educating them in order for them to be financially independent and financially sound adults.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Because I think like almost like respect or like adoration, right? If you try to go back and get it later, it's harder to do, right? Like we let them get these money habits and we let, they start spending money or getting money from us and they can just spend it on whatever and they have no recourse. Then they learn these bad money habits. Now, all of a sudden we're trying to teach them something different. And it's like, it's pulling teeth, right? It's a little bit harder for them to understand it if they didn't get it up front. So that makes a lot of sense. Other than that, right? Other than like maybe not teaching the lesson first, what are some of the other mistakes that you see parents make that kind of hold them back or hold the family back?
Giving them things before they've earned it. So,
Okay.
I felt bad that I was hard on you, or I felt bad in this situation. So let me just give you this. Or you just come in and says, I want these J's, or I want this, or I want, these pair of shoes, or I want the PS5, I want this. Okay, you can want it, but how are you going to get it? What is your plan? Forget it. The reason that we took time in order to do this is because we wanted to make sure that for us, we were teaching the appropriate skills that was necessary based upon the lessons that we had learned as parents. Now, part of that is also we had to have a conversation with the grandparents. Please don't be slipping the 20, because you're undoing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so it became a situation where we said, okay, what is the lesson we would like for them to learn as a part of the process? They didn't really even realize they were learning life lessons until now as adults, they're having to do X, Y, and Z from that perspective. Another thing, think long term. So mentioned to you that, my daughter's a urologist. She's doing extremely well, got a mid-6-figure job, but she lives at home. We have a wonderful house, and she stays in the same town as us. Why would I let her, if she wants to stay home, why would I force her to go get an apartment and spend that money?
Mm-hmm.
So we said, hey, here are the rules. Provided you follow the rules, then you can come home. However, this is how much we're going to require for you to pay, and this is what we're going to require for you to do in order to be at home. And she says, perfect, fine. Her mindset is, listen, I'm saving, I'm stacking things now. I don't have to worry about things later on because of where she's been trained to think long term. And so that was a lesson that they learned that, quite honestly, we didn't necessarily understand in the beginning. But it starts with, what is the vision? Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it age appropriate? And teach the lesson without saying, I'm teaching a lesson. Just make it a part of their day-to-day set of experiences and opportunities, and you go from there.
I like that. I like that. I especially like the teaching the lesson without them knowing it's a lesson, because I think just because of school and everything else, when kids know that they're learning something, they're less likely to care about. Not less likely to care about it, but it's like, oh, another, like, you know what I mean? Another thing, dad's teaching another lesson, you know what I mean? Like I can tell when like something happens and I'm able to kind of see where I can teach, I can lean into that and like help them learn or something from it. Or when I have to actively, okay, this is the thing I'm teaching you. Like there's a different level of response. They have a different look in their eye, right? They listen with a different ear. So I think that that's something that's really important. But all of those things are really important. Like the vision, I don't think a lot of us have a vision, right? We are surviving, right? Or we're coping. We're somewhere in the middle, right? We're not thriving or attempting to thrive in parenting. We've subscribed to the idea that we are just trying to stay afloat, right? We're trying to keep our head above water, and each day is just, we survived it, right? But I think yeah, yeah. But I think when you do some of the things you're mentioning, especially having that vision, like it gives you, even if you just survive today, you understand that there's a part of something larger, right? And so if today was a survival day, we come back tomorrow retooled and ready to thrive, versus like, okay, let's just try to make it again, you know. And that's that 1% better, right? Like even
1% incremental better as you're lifting weights. Hey, I maybe can only, bench 125 today. Okay. But 2 weeks from now, I'm at 130. 2 weeks from there, I'm at 135. I couldn't have done that if I had not gone through training my muscles in order to do the 120 and 125.
right.
From that perspective. And so, give you a great example. Everyone is teaching their kids each and every day. Let me give you a great example. When it's time to eat, isn't there a certain set of expectations you have around every meal?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're teaching a lesson without teaching them a lesson, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So if you have embedded what you do around decisions, money, behavior, as a part of this is just the expectation, they don't see it as a lesson. They see it as this is just how we do things.
Right.
And so that's why I say, look at it from that perspective. So, I give you a great example. We go on vacation, even to this day, our kids or our family go with us. They know one day out of our vacation is going to be dedicated to something educational. We're going to go to a museum. We're going to go something that is educational, because that's what they just know to do. Everybody just grin and just deal with it. That is my wife's expectation, because there's a lesson to be learned in everything. So when people go on vacation with us, first thing they say is, listen, you just got to deal with it, because we're going to a museum. Or we're going to go learn X, Y, and Z. That's just an expectation. So we just have embedded teaching and learning as though we are the primary teacher, not the educator at school. We are the primary teachers, and we have lessons embedded in everything they do, that it just becomes how we do things.
Right. That right there is something that I think is huge, because I think a lot of people complain about school, complain about teachers, kids aren't learning anything, and all these kind of things, right? And I think a lot of times we have left the learning up to the education system. But as you mentioned, maybe we're not teaching like the arithmetic equations, right? Because that doesn't fly in the house. But we are teaching the lessons that last long term, right? Like a lot of us have not used a quadratic formula since the 6th grade, right? But there are some people who are in careers where it matters, right? But a lot of us haven't. So that is not something that we teach our family. But there are things day to day that we are teaching them, like you mentioned, even around meals, that are going to last forever, because they're going to be the things that they teach their children, or conversely, maybe don't teach their children because they didn't like how it worked in their household or in our household. So there is a level of responsibility that I think sometimes we are putting off on someone else. And the reality is that a lot of it is us, and what we teach on a day-to-day basis is what is actually going to, because we have so many more touch points, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
impactful touch points, I'll say that, because most kids are going to go to school at this point. Now they're at school 7 hours a day. You don't get to see them for 7 hours after that. So you have less time, but you have more impact, right? So maybe you only get 3 to 4 hours, but the impact that you have in those 3 and 4 hours is much greater, unless you don't take advantage of those times to impact. And I think that's what we're missing when we say, oh, the schools don't teach these kids nothing. Well, yeah, I mean, they got 45 kids in the classroom. Like, you know, like I work at a virtual charter school. It's from kindergarten to high school. And the one thing I tell parents every time we get like new parents and I have to go and meet and greet and do those things, I'm like, I don't know if you know, but when you sign your kid up for a virtual school, you're signing yourself up to be a teacher.
That's right.
Like, we have teachers. We have 4 levels of support. They got a subject teacher. They got a homeroom teacher. They get a student success manager assigned to them. We have all these levels of support. But the reality is none of them are in your house. And so like, you got them out of public school, which is cool because you have your feelings about public school, but you just signed up to be a teacher. So if you aren't actively engaged, no matter how good the curriculum is, no matter how many levels of support we give, their main level of support, which is you, is not living up to the standard. And so it's not going to work.
Correct.
And I think that goes beyond school.
Yeah, completely agree. You know, as men, we are status seekers. We want status. We want to know the rank. And we know who the alpha dogs are in our families.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of that is you can be the alpha dog without saying a word. They watch your actions.
Yeah.
They watch how you conduct yourself. They know whether they can trust you, or you're transparent, or you're authentic. You know, and I say start there first. Start with being authentically you. And they will have a lot more respect for you as a part of how you interact with them. It is okay to have that status, but they're seeing, are you consistent with that status? Are you walking the walk? Are you talking the talk? And there's that consistency across the board. So that's why I oftentimes say start there first. Your kids want to, they're looking for they're looking for the opportunity to respect you and give you your flowers, so to speak. But you got to make sure they got to look at you and say, he deserves it. And that's where I say start. You know, that's where you kind of go from there. Last week, you know, so I'm trying to do this social media thing. You know, I haven't really done this social media thing. So I opened a TikTok account about 3 weeks ago, right? You know, think I'm going to do it.
Okay.
And I've been making these videos. And last week, my son called me. He said, Dad, you know, you should be off of work. Can we talk? I said, yeah, I'm thinking something wrong because I rarely hear from him. I said, you know, is everything okay? He said, yeah, we got to talk. I said, okay. So call, you know, we're talking. And he says, listen, you got to do a better job on this TikTok video. You're not representing us well. You got to hold the camera some way. And if you need someone to hold the camera, you know, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, I can get upset. But what he's really trying to teach me is something I taught him, that appearance really matters. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, well, tell me the 1 or 2 things I could do a lot better. He says, okay, you got to do this with the camera, and then you need to get some editing software in order to do this to make sure it turns out like this. I said, okay. You know, of course, everything turns out fine. Views will start going up. But imagine, I'm comfortable enough as his dad to know that he was seeking to do something that I've taught him, and that's to make sure that we protect the image of our family. I wasn't necessarily doing something wrong. I just was not doing it the standard that has already been set for him. And he wanted to make sure that occurred. That is okay. You know, to realize that we're passed along, and some of our kids are going to take that baton and they're going to elevate it to a point that we don't even understand where they're taking it, but just accept it.
Right. Yeah, the standard is the standard, right? Whether it's you setting the standard for them or them reminding you of the standard that you've set, right? I think I think there's been something that's kind of like, I've been hearing it kind of over and over again throughout this conversation. And it's when we talk about like teaching the lesson without teaching the lesson, or we talk about like how you show up or some of the things that you do as the leader of the family, a lot of it is, who are you and how are you conducting yourself, right? Because if I'm living my life in a way, if I'm doing certain things a certain way, I am, through my existence, teaching them that this is how a person or an adult or their father, the person they look up to, this is how he walks, how he talks, how he, does even the small things. He ties his shoes, you know what I mean? Like just the little stuff is like, hey, so when he sees the video and he's like, wait a minute, my dad, he does, wait a minute now, this is not, I know him, this isn't him, and maybe he doesn't know that this isn't him.
Yes.
So let me step in and say, hey, Dad, listen, man, I'm, what I mean? Like, let me help you out. And it's awesome to also for you to be humble enough to go, you know what, or vulnerable enough to be like, hey, you know what, you're right. Like I didn't know. I'm an alpha dog, alpha male, all that. Like, but at the end of the day, right? Like, yeah, you're right. The standard is the standard, and so let me adjust, right? And then again, what are the 1 or 2 things that I could do? Like, don't give me everything. Like, listen, calm down now. Like, give me 2 things. It's the lighting and the camera. Okay, I got that. Let me knock that out. When I get good at that, you can give me something else. But yeah, that's really cool, man. I kind of want to. We've been rapping for a minute now, but I do want to talk about like leadership and fatherhood, and I think we're kind of getting into that. We've obviously been talking about the whole time, but specifically leadership and fatherhood, and somebody who's been in your position for 30 plus years, which is still unbelievable, but 30 years. I'm sure you've had some challenging moments in your career, and as someone who's led other people, who leads a family. What is that taught you maybe about fatherhood? Like what are the connections between like leadership and father? I feel like they're the same, right? I think a father is a leader and leader is not a father, but like a father figure. But like, what are your connections? What do you see with leadership and fatherhood?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be authentically you, whether you're a leader or you're the father figure. And I think being authentic and honest with yourself, understanding that your core values are really your core values, and you shouldn't compromise those. And most importantly, be prepared to, as I said in the beginning, learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because as things change as a leader, as things change as a father, you have to be willing to adjust. And so, I'm having to unlearn what it means to be the head of my daughter's life now that she's dating someone. I'm relearning what that means.
Right.
I'm learning, relearning what it means to have that relationship with my son now that he's an adult. And as he reminds me that I actually have a gun and I'm licensed to shoot people. So you're right about that.
Right.
So I say, the important thing about overcome the battle within yourself is be comfortable with the fact that you're going to evolve over time, and that is okay. And when you evolve and you shift, just let people know that you're shifting. But it starts with being comfortable with the person that you're creating and making sure that the person you're creating is authentically you, not the version of you that you want people to see and you're still struggling inside. No, be authentically you. And I think all these other things will kind of fall in place, but it starts with making sure that your locus of control is governed by you and your values and your expectations. And, people may get upset when I say this. We got too many people, too many fathers that's trying to compare themselves to someone else. Be comfortable with you, because your journey, your family should be your own vision and not the vision of someone else. Because truly, when you look at somebody else's vision, you don't know what is happening behind the scenes. It could be a whole lot happening that you're just not aware of, and they're just showing you the public version of them. And so be comfortable with what you're doing, be comfortable with who you are, be comfortable with your provisions, and the vision that you're setting, that's where I always start. Whether you're a leader, whether you're a father, whether you're a father figure, start with that first.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna try something new. I haven't done this before, but I've been taking notes. So if you see me like leaning in, I've been
Go
putting
for
some
it.
stuff down. So usually I only have 2 questions, but I got a few now because we've been talking about a lot of stuff, and you seem like you got a lot of not seem like, right? This conversation makes me want to have more conversations. So I got questions. And I feel like we could talk forever. So I want to just kind of dive in and maybe hit a couple bullet points. Let me pull it up. All right. So what is one, and this is tough, what is one financial lesson every dad should teach his kids?
The rule of 72, compound interest.
Okay, can you expand on that? There you go.
Compound interest. So most people understand compound interest, the rule of 72, from the debt perspective, not from the revenue generated perspective. And so, like say, for instance, you go to the bank, and let's just say if you go to your credit card or, something has an APR of 10%. Divide whatever the APR into 72. That tells you the number of years that whatever that corpus or their principal will double in time, just based upon how the systems are set up. So let's just say if the loan you're taking out for the car is 10%. I know it is probably not, but it's 10%. That means that $10,000 you paid for your car, you divide 10% into 72, that's 7.2 years. So if you take out a 7-year loan, you're going to pay $20,000 for that car because that number doubled in that amount of time.
72. Got you.
But we don't understand that from the perspective of how to generate revenue. So that's why I say start investing as early as possible. So imagine if you put something into a child account when they're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And currently right now, most mutual funds are somewhere between 7 to 12% easily. So that amount that you put in, let's just say over the span of that year, it was $500. That $500 in 7 years became $1,000. 7 more years, now they're into their mid-20s, that is $2,000. Now, 7 years later, and that's not including you putting more money in. So I say to everyone, understand the rule of 72, which is the governing principle, financial principle behind compound interest, not just from the debt perspective, but also from the revenue generating perspective.
Okay. All right. I like that. That is okay. All right. So, so you wrote a book, right? And you obviously you mentioned your book here, right? But what's one book every father should read outside of yours? Yours first, but then what else?
So the book that I tell every father to read, and I tell every father to sit down with their kids and read, would be Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
That book is powerful because it talks about exposure and experience. Was the rationale behind how he became Rich Dad versus the education only of the Poor Dad.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And then what's the best advice you ever received about fatherhood?
The best advice that I received about fatherhood came from my grandfather. He said, when you become a father, just realize they're not going to break. And so don't be prepared, to set the structures up for them because they're not going to break. They're going to be resilient just like you. What you have to do is realize that, that you don't necessarily have to treat them with kid gloves. You got to be gentle at times, but you got to make sure that you develop the structure for them. So they're not going to break. They're going to mold into the young adults. Well, first the young people and then the young adults that you've created an environment for them to serve as that particular mold.
Okay. All right. I got 2, maybe 3 more. All right. We're still good?
Go for it. We're good.
Okay. All right. All right. What does freedom, right? Because freedom's the title of the book. What does freedom mean to you now as a man and as a father?
So freedom means for me is the fact that I can go to work whenever I want to work. And I can buy whatever I want to buy when I want to buy, because I've developed and I've had the discipline over time in order to become financially solvent, where now I'm free to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So I work full time because I want to work it, not because I have to. And literally, I take my paycheck and I invest it because now I'm investing for my great grandkids. And so I literally take my paycheck to invest for those generations. And so, but I have that disciplined lifestyle that governs what I do, governs who I am and what I do. That's the vision I have for my family. That's the vision that we use to govern all of our conversation.
Okay. All right. I like that. Another meaning question, right? And this is the one that I ask everybody. And it's interesting because as many guys as I ask, no matter who they are or where they are, there's always a little bit of a different answer. So I'm always curious to hear from each guest what their experience is and what their meaning is. And so that question is what does fatherhood mean to you?
Fatherhood means to me that I'm accountable. Simple means that I'm accountable. They didn't ask to come here. It was based upon my actions that determined that they're here. And I'm accountable for investing in them, providing for them, keeping them safe, making sure that they're the best version. They have the potential to be the best version of themselves possible. But I'm accountable for all that. And, some could say responsibility, other things. But for me, it is, if there was one word, it's accountability. You're accountable for the results of the actions that happen, in my case, between my wife and I.
Okay. All right. Last question, kind of a two-part question, is if we did this thing right and we're able to get every father in the world to listen to this podcast, and at this very moment, what is it that you want them to hear?
Yeah. The first thing I would say to every father is that give yourself a pat on the back. And realize that you're doing the best that you can do, because we all have very different situations. But it first start with the fact that you are willing to invest in your gift of being a father, because it's truly a gift and a pleasure for us to have this opportunity. So give yourself a pat on the back, affirm that you are doing the best of your ability, and most importantly, that you're going to hold yourself accountable from that perspective. That is an important aspect, that I would say. And then the last thing I would say to you is, remember, when it's all said and done, you want to be able to say that I've done the best that I could do with the circumstances, and the resources that I was given in order to help this next generation of who I am. You are a brand, your kids are a brand. Embrace the brand that you are developing and creating as a father.
I love that. At the end of the day, you want to say that I used it all, right? I used everything you gave me. All right. Second part to that is if we were able to dial it down, right? We don't have as many people listening to the podcast. We got 2 right now, and it's your kids. What is it that you want them to hear?
The one thing that I would say to my kids is, I have done the best that I could to make you the best version of yourself possible in order to have long-term success. You may not have appreciated the process, but I think the process has prepared you to be the best version of yourself possible. And realize that I've tried to equip you so that you didn't have to suffer the same fate that I suffered or your mom suffered as a part of what we had to do as a part of our upbringing. And so you may not be perfect, but you're perfect for the moment.
I love that. You may not be perfect, but you're perfect for the moment. Man, listen, I say this with the most sincerity I could possibly muster, is I totally appreciate the conversation. I feel like I have so many more questions. Like I feel like there's so much more I want to learn from you. I totally appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, to share your expertise, to share your stories, to share your journey. I really, really appreciate it. I'm not just saying that because of the podcast. Every guy that I have the opportunity to talk to on this podcast is a blessing for me, because the reason I started this podcast is because I didn't have enough fatherhood conversations when I became a father. Like, I just became a father. You know what I mean? My dad is in my life and he's present, but that's not his, these kind of conversations were not his thing. Right. And I love him and he's great at everything he does, but this wasn't it. And so I've continued to have these conversations, and I appreciate you for taking the time to have this conversation, to share with me, and more importantly, to share with the other guys who are listening right now, who may not have had the opportunity like I did. And so thank you. Thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for you creating a platform and caring enough for us as men, especially men of color, to use your platform to educate us. Because without the platform, the opportunity would not have occurred. So, you need to commend yourself for a job well done. And I'm very appreciative that you cared enough to give me the opportunity to share your platform for, this particular opportunity.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, like I said, I have more questions. Maybe we have to get together again and schedule a part 2 of this, where we spend some more time diving a little deeper and getting a little more into the conversation. But I understand that time is of the essence and time is important. And so I'm going to let you go. But before we do, if guys are wanting to reach out to you, if they're wanting to connect, or, at the very least, just say, hey, thank you for stopping by the podcast, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I make it very easy for everyone. My website is Cedric B Howard, CEDRICBHOWARD, and that is the handle for all of my social media as well. So, whatever social media platform you're on, including my website, is all the same thing. Cedric B Howard.
Awesome. Awesome. Fellas, as always, I'll have it down in the show notes. If you're on the website, it'll be in the guest profile. All of that stuff is there for you. Please do me a favor. Go follow Doc on TikTok. We got to get his followers up, get his views up. He's just getting started. He's getting his lighting together. Don't worry, right? Like, be patient. God's still working with him. Like, it's gonna come through, right? He may not come when you call, but he's always on time, right? And he's going to be on time. So please make sure you go follow, make sure you reach out. And like I said, just let him know that you appreciate him taking the time. Thank you again. And I'll be talking to you fellas soon. All right. All right. That's it. If this conversation with Dr. Howard hit home for you, do me a favor. Share it with another dad who needs to hear it. And make sure you're following the show so you never miss an episode. You can also find Dr. Howard at cedricbhoward.com on all social platforms. Don't just listen. Apply this to your fatherhood today.